Hello my friends, my name is Amber Youngworth and I'm with the Minnesota DNR Division of Forestry out of Hibbing in northern Minnesota, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to identify our conifers in Minnesota. So when we say conifer, we're talking about our trees that are green all year long, like the one behind me, and they don't lose their foliage, which is their needles, unlike our deciduous trees, which are our leaves. Trees with leaves. So not every green tree in the winter is actually a pine tree, because I know a lot of people like to refer to all of our needled trees that stay green in the winter a pine tree. But these actually are pine trees. They're called red pine. They're also called Norway pine. And we're going to move up a little closer here on the tree, and we'll take a closer look at the needles. And here you can see that the needles are fairly long. They're 4 or 5 inches long. And if we take, you can see the needles are in clusters or bundles. And if we take one bundle off of the branch, you can see that they come in a bundle of 2 or a cluster of 2. And if you look at the bark, you can also identify this tree by its bark. It has a characteristic red coloring in the bark, and also if you break it off, it's kind of reddish on the inside, and that's how it gets its name, the red pine. We have found another pine tree, and this one looks very much different from the tree we just talked about, the red pine. So you can see that the needle length is much shorter. They're more like 2 inches in length. And the bark is much flatter. It kind of has a small scales on it and maybe a little bit of a yellowish coloring in there. And then it also has these very distinctive pine cones. So this one has these tightly closed pine cones. They usually have a little bit of curl to them. This one's fairly straight. This pine tree is actually called a jack pine, and it's commonly found growing with the red pine or Norway pine, as it is here. The neat thing about jack pine is that the cones require intense heat for them to open up and release their seeds. So jack pine requires either a fire or very strong sunlight to cause them to release their seeds. So here we have some more conifers that are growing in the same location as our red pine and our jack pine, but you can see that they look a little different. They have shorter needles than our jack pine, and if you look at them up close, they're actually flat. The needles themselves are flat, so if you were to take one needle off of the branch and tried to roll it in between your fingers, you wouldn't be able to do so because they aren't round. And you can see that the bark is a little gray. And since they have flat needles, hopefully that'll help you remember that flat needles mean that it's a fir tree. And this tree species is actually used to make Christmas wreaths. So these are called balsam fir. This tree is not a pine tree at all. It's actually a spruce tree. So we have 2 different spruces in Minnesota, the white spruce and the black spruce. And the main difference between the 2 trees is where they're found. So this tree is the white spruce. And if you look, the needles are fairly short, similar to the balsam fir. And this is a rather young one because it's much easier to get an up-close look at the needles on the younger trees than the older trees. But if you took one of the needles off of this tree's branch, you would find that the needle actually has 4 sides to it. So it's square, and if you think of square, starts with an S, just like spruce starts with an S. And this one is the white spruce. So that concludes our walk today. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and that you'll be able to go out on your own nature walk, either through your neighborhood or your local park or even in a state forest, and you can identify all the trees that we went over today. Remember, we started out with the state tree, which is the Norway pine, also referred to as red pine, and then we moved on to the jack pine, and then we learned how to identify balsam fir, and then we wrapped it up with the white spruce.